Amen. We want to continue with the we're going to talk about today supernatural keys that can heal any relationship regardless of the condition. We want to start talking about that, and again, I share with you some things to think about with your relationships. Um, in other words, we really got to get to a place that we're not really looking at ourself and looking at what's important to us. Really have to look at many times what's important to whoever you're trying to heal that relationship with. In other words, what is it? If it's a spouse, what's important to them? How can we begin to take and break the power of rejection in their life? Again, I'm going to share this with you, and I'm going to put it up for just a moment, and then we're going to take it back, and I'm going to share it with you again. There you can see here. There's a tree, and at the top of it is rebellion, and that's actually the what you see in the tree. That's probably 90% of it, but actually that's really not the issue. The issue right here is down here. It's in the rejection aspect of it. It's down at the very bottom. It's rejection, resentment, rebellion. The rejection is the roots. The resentment is the tree that nourishes that the rejection nourishes, and then the resentment causes rebellion. And if you notice with the rebellion in here, it's a large area. It's what you see mostly. But the truth is, the rejection is the real issue, and that's the real part that we really have to start dealing with. So I'm going to pull this back for just a second, and then we'll go back to what I'm sharing. Okay, but I just wanted you to see that that's really critical. That you're going to see that rejection, resentment, rebellion. I'm going to show it to you. Got a couple more people came on. I just want to show it to you one more time, real quick. This is what we're going to be talking about: rejection, resentment, rebellion. Rejection is the roots, resentment is the branch, it's the actual trunk, but rebellion is what you're seeing. That's the behavior that when you're talking about a relationship that's broken, that's the actual, all the behaviors that are being done, but that's not the reason it's being done. It's being done because of the rejection. The rejection is the roots. Many times, one of the problems that we have is when we try to take the rejection, which is the or the relationship itself, and we try to heal that relationship, we don't deal with the rejection. The only way to heal the rebellion is to begin to deal with the rejection. The rejection takes care of the resentment. So we're going to talk to that again a little bit later, but I want you to see that because again, that's one of the real major issues so often with relationships is it's the rejection. That is the key. That is the area which has to be destroyed. And that's one of the things that you don't hear talked about a whole lot when people talk about relationships. They talk about getting along with each other, how to repair relationships. They do not deal with the area of rejection, and that is the main area that we have to deal with. So again, it's not psychological; it is supernatural, and that's one of the things that's so critical. So again, one of the things I'm going to give you some natural things to start with, and then some supernatural things. Number one, um, when you repair relationships, it's hard work. It's hard work to repair relationships. It's not easy. If you think that all of a sudden, your relationship is going to be simple and it's easy to fix and it's going to be real fast, you're going to be mistaken because it's not fast. It can be done, but it's going to be hard work. Number two, you've got to be willing to make the changes to see your relationships turn around. If you're not willing to make changes, you're not going to see them turn around. You have to understand that there's going to have to be changes made on your behalf. The changes that are made on your behalf, ultimately down the road, are going to make changes in that person, whoever that person is, that relationship. But first, the changes have to be with you. Do not look for that individual to be the one making all these changes, because if that's what you're looking for, you're going to find out that you're going to be disappointed. So you've got to be willing to make the changes first. The more that relationship is broken, the more effort it will require. Listen to what I'm saying. The more that relationship is broken, the more it will require to be able to fix that relationship. And again, the third thing is I want you to attempt to work on your relationships one at a time. Number one, you're going to have to really want to that relationship to work. It has to be something that you really desire. If you don't desire it, it's not going to be worth the effort because it will take effort. Number two, you got to be willing to make the changes in yourself to see things change. And number three, try to attempt relationships and try to fix them one at a time. Really difficult to try to fix all of them at one time, and it's really difficult to try to fix if you got 5 or 6 children. It's difficult to fix all 6 relationships simultaneously, almost impossible. What you really need to do is really need to focus on one at a time. Pick the person that's willing to work with you. Pick the person that wants to have a relationship with you, that wants to see some things change. That's the easiest way. And don't be discouraged if your first attempt is rebuffed. That's normally the problem with rejection, because you have some issues going on. We're going to talk about in just a minute with rejection. But number four, don't push and shove and try to fix the relationship so it's better for you. One of the major areas I see is, I want to fix my relationship with my husband, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it like this, and this, and it just makes the relationship worse, because again, it's not about you. If we're going to try to fix a relationship, it has to be about the other person. It cannot be about you. So these are kind of things that you really need to look at. Some of the things that I want to let you kind of look at. Number one, again, say for instance, we're going to talk husbands now. That husband comes and he's spending time with his buddies. He's spending time at sporting events. He's spending time at work. Always remember why. It's in almost every case, the reason they do that is because that's the area where they feel the most valuable. That's the area where they feel the most appreciated. And it's also an area where they're literally escaping home to go have those other activities, because those activities, kind of give them a sense of freedom. It kind of gives them a sense of not being under pressure. Sometimes it's just an escape, and you have to realize what's going on. Because when you realize that you're dealing with escape mentality, is they're trying to escape what's going on at the home, and that's what needs to change. So again, you have to look at what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing. So many times we look at behaviors and we say, I don't like that behavior. I don't like this. We never look at the behavior and say, this is why they're doing it. I need to know why they're doing it, because when I know why they're doing it, I can make the changes that are necessary so that they won't want to do it. You'll never get somebody to change because you're making them change. You always get people to change because they want to. And that's one of the biggest issues. We're going to talk about that when we talk about unconditional love, because that is the way to break every single area when you have broken relationships. We're going to talk first about husbands, okay, and wives, mates first. I think that's the most important thing. So many times we want to fix our relationship with our children, but we haven't fixed our relationship with our mate. Always remember, the first relationship, the most important relationship in any family, is the mate. It's the husband or the wife. The first thing you got to do is you got to go ahead and change that dynamic first. You're never going to really be able to change your relationships with your children, because what they're doing is, a lot of times your relationship with your children is modeling the relationship that you have with your mate. Now, it may look like, you may have a bad relationship with your mate and your children love you and so forth, but ultimately what you're trying to do is relationships get fixed from the top down. If you can't immediately fix that relationship with your mate, the most important thing is that you respect them and that you love them and that you model the right behavior, because that's going to be something that your kids are going to be watching. But let's go ahead and start with this first, and we'll talk about children tomorrow. Today, it's about a mate. One of the things that you want to make sure to do is you've got to assess what's wrong with your relationship from your mate's perspective and not yours. So many times, and this is really, really hard, especially for women, because a woman, wants to assess things the way she feels like it is, because again, feelings and emotions. I feel, I want, I think, I need. Those are normally emotional responses, and women are a lot of times more emotional than men. Doesn't mean that men won't get in there sometimes and start telling you, I think, I want, I feel. But at the same time, you have to realize that those things are not really what's going on. What's really going on is, um, there's areas where they're being rejected, areas where they don't feel important, areas where we're down at the root core issue is they do not feel connected, they don't feel loved, and they don't feel appreciated. Now, it may come up with a whole bunch of other things. It may, other things that people say, and that's where it's really critical for you to ask your mate what's wrong with your relationship and what would they like to see changed. Not what you'd like to see changed. What would they like to see changed? You've got to go ahead and be able to talk with them. What's wrong with our relationship, and what would you like to see changed? Now you're going to get one of two responses. Sometimes you're going to get a long list of what they're criticizing you of, finger pointing and blaming. That's not necessarily bad. Okay, at least they're talking to you and telling you what issues or the way they feel about it. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have criticisms, finger pointing, and blaming. It's a place to start. The worst area is when someone says nothing's wrong, everything's fine, we're doing great, when you know that there's a whole lot lacking. That's a much more difficult relationship, because in those particular cases, what's happening is they're blocking these things away. They're already walking away from the relationship. At least if they're telling you what's wrong, at least if they're saying this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed, you know that at least they're looking, at least they care. Sometimes when someone says nothing's wrong, everything's fine, we're doing great, what they've done is they basically started to walk away from the relationship. That's not a good place to be. That's a bad place to be. If that's happening, don't just take that and say, okay, everything's great, because that doesn't mean that. Sometimes it means that actually the relationship's a whole lot worse off than what you think it is. So something to consider here. First thing you want to do is you want to find out what's wrong, from their perspective, not from yours. I remember doing this with my daughter years ago, and a lot of things that she felt like were happening were not things that I really wanted to do. It wasn't things that I felt was happening, but it was things she felt was happening. And the most important thing was to get out what she felt about it, not what I felt. So many times as parents, you want to get in and say, well, that's not the way it is. That's not really the way it is. And you want to start defending yourself. If you start doing that, you are going to end up losing. That is the wrong thing to do. You've got to resist the urge to be defensive. When your mate tells you that you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, things about this she doesn't like, he doesn't like, whatever, you have got to resist the urge to be defensive, and resist the urge to tell them what you'd like to see. After they get through telling you what needs to change, the one thing we want to do now is, okay, now that you told me what you think, let me tell you what I think. No, wrong. That will end up in a fight every time, and that will just totally defeat what you're trying to do. Resist the temptation to tell them what's wrong with them. Okay, it's not about that. This is trying to begin to find out what he finds or she finds lacking in the relationship. You cannot go and fix something if you don't know what's wrong. You got to know what's wrong. I recommend that you add to this, pray about this, and ask the Holy Ghost what he says is wrong, what he says is lacking, what he said the problems are. Okay, because he's going to see things that your mate's not going to see, and he's going to see it clearly. He's going to know what's going on. So again, you have to move into the supernatural phase if we want to. But the first thing you have to do is you have to sit down. It's kind of like in a deliverance session. The very first thing we'll get them to do is tell their story. You've got to start getting some, find out where they're at and what they've been through, and what they're looking for before you can ever really begin to solve relationship issues. So you got to sit down, and that's where that talking helps. Resist the temptation now to begin to criticize and correct. Because remember, correction equals rejection. I was going to show you this picture again, okay? Got to keep this in mind. Remember, rejection. When we correct, it's rejection. When we correct, it's rejection. You've got to stop resisting that issue about trying to correct somebody, because that will always lead to rejection. Then it will lead to resentment. Then it will lead to rebellion. The relationship will get worse. Correction is rejection for many people. Even when you do your helpful suggestions, well, this is just my helpful suggestion. No, it equals rejection, which is resentment, rebellion. And see, what happens is many times when we have this picture, what it does is the more we try to deal with the rejection, the more we try to deal with the rebellion and we try to change the behavior, the more it feeds the rejection, the more it feeds the resentment, the more it feeds the rebellion. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the behavior by dealing with the rebellion. But guess what? All we do is feed the rejection. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to change people's behavior. So many times we want our kids not to deal with, I want you to stop doing this. I want you to stop doing that. I want you not to do this. Understand, when you get into correction, it is rejection. Rejection, resentment, rebellion. But I need you to do this. I need you to stop doing this. I need you to stop doing this. I need you to do this. Rejection, resentment, rebellion. When you understand correction is rejection, you understand now why you're not being successful getting rid of the rebellious behavior. And it's something that you're going to have to understand. For most people, correction equals rejection. Rejection feeds resentment. Resentment feeds rebellion. So, one of the things that we have to look at is, what is the solution? How do we begin to heal relationships? How do we begin to make these things change? There is only one way, and the pattern was done by Jesus. Jesus did not change our rebellion. He did not deal with our resentment. He dealt with the rejection. That's one of the reasons he came and he died and he shed his blood, to break the power of rejection in our life. God so loved the world. What is it that we didn't have? Love, acceptance. God so loved the world that he sent his son, who gave his life for us, even while we were yet in sin. If that's not a picture of really the whole issue here of rejection, resentment, rebellion, I don't know what is. Because, that's the key issue. Again, God so loved the world, unconditionally loved the world, even when they didn't deserve it, even when they didn't get to a place that they we didn't do anything to deserve it. Undeserved love and unconditional love, regardless of what we did. While we were yet sinners, Jesus died for us. While we were yet in rebellion, he died for us. What's the picture? How to get rid of rejection, resentment, rebellion. While we were yet in sin, while we were yet in rebellion, while we yet had resentment against God, he went and cut out the rejection, and he loved us unconditionally. And see, that is the key to begin to destroy broken relationships. You've got to say to yourself, where's the rejection? Where are they feeling rejected? Where are they feeling unloved? How am I acting? So many times wives act like they're, if you look at a husband and he's been in a difficult relationship, for instance, his mother, how he responded to her, and they had a difficult relationship, and then the wife takes on many of the same characteristics that the mother did. So what happens is, when the say, for instance, mom pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. She always tried to get this done. She always tried to do this. Always tried to get people to be in a hurry. I want to see this done. I want to see that done. I want to see this done. I want to see that done. Say, for instance, that was the issue. Many times in relationships with a wife, if the wife has the same kind of characteristics, she's pushing, she's shoving, she's trying to get him to do this and get him to do this. What happens is it begins to bring a whole firestorm, but it's not just from what the wife's doing. It's what's left buried from what the mom did. So what he does is he sees the same thing again. I hated it when I was a kid. I hated it when I was growing up, and I hate it in my wife now. So what happens is there's a reaction against it. What's the loving thing to do? The loving thing to do is not to push and not to shove. Now you might think, well, this needs to get done and that needs to get done. Then you need to start thinking about creative ways that you can do it lovingly. And for instance, one of the things that you might want to do is, yard work needs to be done. Suggest that you and him do it together so that you can have fun. You can share things together. Maybe it's not your thing to want to do yard work. Who cares? You want to get him involved in these things. You want to be able to do it together. Then do the yard work together. Look, let me come out there and help you do this. I'm not very good at it. You're probably a whole lot better than I am. I know you can help me do this, but you know what? Let's do it together. Again, these are items that we're beginning to break the power of rejection. Always remember, when you break the power of rejection, rejection says, you go do this, you go do this, you need to take care of this. When you start doing things together, when you start doing things with your husband or with your wife, and you start drawing them in, one of the major areas for ministers many times, and I found myself in the same area, one of the major areas for ministry is quite often what we want to try to do is, we don't make our wife or our husband our main disciple. They need to be the main disciple. You need to get them involved in those things. If they say to themselves, I really don't want to get involved, then what you need to do is you need to make that mate feel important and feel like, it's necessary. Because again, men need to be wanted. They need to be wanted. They need to be needed. One of the greatest needs for men is to be needed and be wanted. And that's why it's so critical for wives to stop, let's just go off with the girls and let's do this. And let's go off with the church girls and do this. Well, I've got this women's group and I've got this women's group. All these kind of things will isolate the husband. Okay. One of the things that the husband does not want to do, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but a lot of times they do not want to be around a women's group because let me tell you, women love to be around other women because they can be heard and they can talk and they can just continue to be, on and on and on, be talking about all kinds of things, and they don't get tired of talking. Men many times do not, their words are out way before a woman's words are out. Okay, they don't need all that talking. Okay, that's one of the reasons why so many times when a lot of times you'll see men be on one side and women be on the other side. Men communicate with a whole lot fewer words than women do. Okay, and I'm not picking on it. I'm just saying, they're different. So one of the things that you want to do is many times when you get your wife involved in these things, and it's sometimes it's best just for the two of you to do it together, or to do it together in small groups. I always recommend small groups, especially when you're discipling, your wife. One of the things that happens so often in church is when you disciple your wife with a bunch of other people, guess who gets all the attention? All the other people. Your wife always seems to be the last one to get prayed for. Your wife always tends to be the last one that her needs get met. She's the one helping everybody else, but she really doesn't get met. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make them feel important. So you want to do it with small groups, and you want to do it with groups where, maybe just a handful of a couple people, and that really want to see your wife move ahead in the things of God. Again, these are supernatural things. These are not natural things. Here's some of the things you can do if it's a wife. You need to dream together. Listen to me. You need to dream together. Don't just dream with men. Dream with your wife. Dream about what God can do. Dream about what's the things that you guys want to do together. Many times what happens is as people get along in relationships, they stop dreaming. People get further along in relationships, they stop. They start settling for the way reality is, and reality may not be all that great. Keep them dreaming. Always remember, it's about discussing destiny. It's about God's destiny. It's about the plans and purposes of God in your life. One of the things I can tell you is it will change your relationship when you start dreaming together with your wife about what you guys want to do together, about what you want to see happen in God's kingdom, about how you want to begin to see God begin to move in your lives, and things that you want to see done, and things that you want to see changed, and people that you want to help. When you start getting out of the natural, because the natural is how we get into ruts. The natural is how we get into get to a place that we start really moving in God's supernatural kingdom. You need to start getting into dreaming with each other. You need to start beginning to discuss the things that originally drew you together. There were dreams when you first started. That's what drew you together as a husband and wife. There were dreams. There were things that you wanted. There were things that you wanted to see happen. And so many times what ends up happening is we stop dreaming. And when we stop dreaming, then what happens is our relationships just begin to fail, and they begin to fall. You never want to stop discussing destiny. You never want to stop discussing dreaming together. Again, one of the things that we have to realize too is that, if you're going to make your husband and you're going to make him feel valuable, you need to let him know how valuable he is. I told you one of the most important things for men is they have to feel wanted and they have to feel needed. There's got to be some areas in their life where you need them, areas in their life where they're important, areas in their life where you can't do it without them. Okay, those are areas that you need to begin to build in your relationship. You need to start putting that into your dreams. You need to start putting that into the things that you're doing together. So many times, like with husbands, if they want to be a minister, then we've got a husband that ministers in the church and does all these other things, and this is the minister's wife. That's the wrong concept. It's not the minister's wife. I like what Billy Graham said about his wife, Ruth. So when I get to heaven, they're not going to say this is Billy Graham's wife. They're going to say this is Ruth's husband. Okay, you know what I'm saying to you is and that's where you have to have it. You've got to start as a couple. You really got to start valuing each other's opinions. You got to start valuing each other's input and really beginning to take each other and causing them to be the center point of a lot of things that you do together. You got to spend time with them alone. You got to spend time with them together. One of the things I did for these last couple of days is I came up here to Landrum. I've been in Fayetteville for a while. I said, honey, I'm coming up here to spend time with you. I'm not coming here to do this or do that. And that's what we do. Now she's out working. I'm doing this. And there's other things that I'm working. But when she gets home, it's all about her. Yesterday I cooked her dinner. Okay. What I'm saying to you is you have to understand my wife is the most important woman in my life. And your wife or your husband needs to be the most important person in your life. If they're not the most important person in your life, you need to make some adjustments and some changes because supernaturally God has joined the two of you together, and there has to be in your life there has to be such a connection. And if there's not a connection, then supernaturally you have to ask God to give you that connection because you need to connect again. You need to make your wife not only feel valuable, but you need to make her feel that you cannot do the ministry that you're called to do without her. You cannot live the life that you're called to do without her. Always remember, couples are called together. They're not called separately. There's no such thing in a husband and a wife as this is my calling. This is your calling. It doesn't work that way. This is our calling. This is what we need to do together. This is the things that make us special. I'll never forget when I got married to Brenda. One of the things that as I told her was, I said, you know what? One puts 1,000 to flight, two 10,000. You are my secret weapon. When I pray for people, I need you there with me. I need you right there because you are my secret weapon. When you pray and I pray together, the two of us can do 10 times the amount that we can do separately. And that's so much of a key. I'm not just saying that. It's absolutely a supernatural key. One of the things that we do is we put our money together. And I know some of you are yelling, what do you mean? We put our money together. Why? Because it's our money, but it's God's money first. But it's God's money first. I have to understand He owns it. We don't have a discussion about money because we always ask God, what do you want to do with your money? What do you want to do with it? When husbands and wives have their own bank accounts and they have their own things and they start separating each other, you know what ends up happening? It begins to divide and doesn't begin to unite. My wife and I work together. We work together with a joint checking account. Doesn't mean sometimes you may not have a small one over here or over there, because you might get it off of your work or whatever else. But we put our money together because I believe with all my heart, God blesses unity. God blesses jointness. If you want to have your money blessed, you need to put your money together. You want to start causing supernaturally God to begin to bless your marriage. You need to put things together, not put them separately. Things like prenups and all these other kind of things. Basically, what you're saying is our relationship's going to fail, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm doing all I can to make sure that when it fails, I'm going to be okay financially. If that's the way you feel about it, don't get married. The two become one flesh, so inseparable with each other. That's God's thing. It becomes so inseparable that you can't take the two of them and you can't break them apart. You can't make them, individual. They're together and it's supernaturally together. So critical that we end up understanding these are the supernatural things that we can begin to do. These are supernatural keys. Ask God Said, God, you joined us together. And God, it says, let no man put asunder, let no woman put asunder what God has joined together. Part of your prayer needs to be for your husband and wife. God, join us together again. God, there's been a break. There's been an issue. There's been a situation where we're not together. God, would you join us together again? God, you supernaturally put us together. Repair the breach. Repair it, God. Put us together again supernaturally, God. Draw us together. The areas where it's broken. Ask God. Two of you need to pray together and say, God, put us back together again. Join us together, God, where there's been a break, where there's been issues, where there's been situations where the enemy has got in. Put us together again supernaturally and join us together. Again, we're talking about supernatural keys. Supernatural keys. See, that's what's so important. These are not natural keys. These are supernatural keys. And that's why I said it's so important that we understand that, when you get involved in these areas, these are not natural suggestions, because naturally, most of the time, the relationships will never work. You need to do the same thing with your relationships with your spouse, with your children, other things. We're going to talk about children tomorrow, but see, where there's been breaks in your relationship, you've got to go ahead and understand that God has ordained supernaturally for children and parents to be bonded together with one another. There's a supernatural bond. And what happens is we go through life and all the other things that go on, the bonds become weaker and they become broken because of natural things that happen in our life. You've got to ask God to begin to prick those bonds back together again. Only God can heal your relationship. Only God can begin to give you unconditional love for your husband. Second thing you do is and I'm going to go quickly, but second thing you do is ask God to give you a supernatural love, an unconditional love for your mate. Say, God, I need a supernatural love, an unconditional love. I need you to pour love. The Bible says that love, the supernatural love of God is shed abroad in your heart for issues and for people. The supernatural love of God is shed abroad in my heart for others. See, that's so critical that you realize that it's a supernatural work. Ask God to supernaturally put that love in your heart. Ask him to supernaturally begin to place it there. Because again, God is the one that changes us. Again, let me show you this real quickly. And the only reason I'm showing you this is I want you to see it because this is so critical. 3 R's: rejection, resentment, rebellion. That's what causes this: rejection, resentment, rebellion. If you don't get rid of this right down here, you'll never see this destroyed. This is the key. When Jesus went ahead and he destroyed the fig tree, he cursed it at the roots. He cursed it at the roots right here. And once he cursed it at the roots, the trunk and everything else left. But it wasn't until he went ahead and destroyed the roots. You got to destroy the resentment. Okay. And all these other things I'm talking about is the things that get between us, things that cause us not to look at each other differently. So many times it's the cares of the world. So many times it might be the kids. It might be all kinds of things. You've got to understand that nothing comes between you and your mate. Nothing. And both of you have to see it that way. And you got to fight for your relationships. Instead of fighting with your mate, you need to fight for them. You need to realize that the devil's there to try to destroy the two of you. The devil's there to try to keep you guys from being together. You've got to make a decision. I am not going to let the devil destroy my relationship with my mate. I'm going to make sure that I do everything I can to make sure this relationship works. Again, supernatural keys. Breaking the power of rejection. Key number 1. Breaking the power of rejection. Breaking the power of correction. Breaking the power of pushing and shoving. All these other things cause rejection. What you're basically saying to your husband or your wife is, you need to change because you're not good enough. You need to change because I need you to do this and I need you to do this. There's things wrong with you. That all speaks to rejection. Rejection, resentment, rebellion. Why does a lot of times men go out with other men and they go out with their buddies? Because their buddies don't reject them. Their buddies will sit back there and, laugh at their silly whatevers. They'll go to work, and most of the time at work, that's a place where they feel the most valuable. It's a place where they feel most appreciated is at work. So what happens is they'd rather go to work. Why do they become workaholics? They don't want to come home because when they come home, there's going to be rejection. instead of when they come home, it should be the place where no matter what else went on in life, that when they come home, that is a place where they are loved and they are accepted, and everything that when they come home, that is the place where they can have refuge. When I come home, one of the things I love about coming home is when I come home, I'm my wife makes sure that I am loved and I am cared for, and there's nothing that she won't do for me when I come home. I feel the same way about her. She was out working. I was home because I was doing some other things, and I cooked dinner for her. Okay. Most important thing was when she came home, she felt loved, she felt appreciated, and I took care of her. Okay. And my point is, these are things that we have to understand. Breaking the power of rejection is the key to starting on the relationship. Then we're going to talk about resentment, how to deal with the resentment, how to deal with the rebellion issues. But number one, we got to break the power of rejection. Amen. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. We're going to continue on this maybe next week at that at the same thing, because again, these are the issues that if you want to heal relationships that you have to deal with. God bless you guys, and we will talk to you on part 3, and that will be tomorrow.